US Abrams are now in Ukraine. It seems that Ukrainians are so excited about this. Are they going to change anything on the battlefield? Are these tanks different from those ones that came from Germany and the UK?
No, they're not going to change anything whatsoever. They will burn as well as German Leopards. Officially, German Leopard was considered the best tank, at least in the world. That's how they claimed. It cannot withstand Cornet, neither can any version of the Abrams, but they were sending actually kind of older version. So yeah, it's going to burn as well as Leopards or Swedish modifications of Leopards. So makes no difference whatsoever. They send what? Tank battalion, 31 tanks, couple of weeks of work, and they probably will be hiding them in somewhere. So, but it doesn't matter.
If you remember, during this counteroffensive, the German media, the US media were criticizing Ukrainians for their strategy in this war, in this counteroffensive. They were talking about the Ukrainians are dividing these brigades in tiny groups. These are not based on the NATO tactics. Now it's appearing that they're talking about that Ukrainians were right to use those tactics to divide these brigades in tiny groups.
Well, it's very simple because of the incompetence of the NATO militaries. Their field manuals, all of them, are written by people who never encountered more than the counterinsurgency type warfare. For example, Mr. Petraeus wrote field manuals on counterinsurgency or insurgency. So no NATO officer or soldier or US Army officer or soldier ever faced real combined arms warfare, and especially combined arms warfare by the peer or better than peer enemy, which is Russia. And that is why initially they thought, oh yeah, let us concentrate those forces, let us attack Russians and concentrate. Well, yeah, traditionally it is considered that, yeah, concentration of force is the best way to go. The problem, of course, we're living in the 21st century. And the basically fundamental issue, fundamental truth of any modern warfare is, if I see you, I'll kill you. And I spoke about it many times. Russians have excellent ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And Russia is the second, actually, nation after the United States, United States being the first one in terms of the quantity of the satellites. But Russians are second after that in terms of the battlefield surveillance, both on the space base assets. And of course, I spoke about this many times, even on the level of battalion commander, battalion ISR, or, intelligence complex, battalion level, they see into depth of up to 30 kilometers. So you have to start, if you want to attack, somehow get into those columns, armor columns, because you need to basically deploy your whatever, the armor brigade, armor battalion, or what have you, let alone we're talking about armor division. You need to build another columns to attack. How do you do this? When even before you begin to the deployment into the columns, from the traveling column, which is a single column, you need to kind of spread into this, formation. It's you are killed on march. You are marching and you're already being assaulted by all kinds of the weapons. Then you get into the range of Russian artillery and it's over. Simple as that. And those people in NATO, they had no clue about it.
Do you think that the strategies that Ukrainians were using in this counteroffensive, especially in this war, were dictated by NATO? How much they were using those tactics? Do we know about that?
Yeah, I mean, don't forget, since 2015, actually, the Ukrainian armed forces have been engaged very seriously with the NATO training, which is US training, or of course, great, land power of the United Kingdom. So, and yeah, as the result, they have been subjected to all this, as they call, advanced training, which completely discounted the possibility that somebody will shoot back. the whole NATO doctrine, fighting doctrine, all those field manuals are built around that we go in with the overwhelming firepower, those long-range fires, and voila. The problem, of course, they didn't anticipate, which tells you everything you need to know about the lack of competence, is the fact that somebody will start shooting back, and somebody have even better firepower. That has never been reflected in any kind of training. And then, of course, when they got into the scale of this special military operation, well, guess what? Ukrainians have been cooked. And now they say that your training is garbage. We're going back to our Soviet training and things of this nature. Well, they have to, because obviously now that you have third iteration of the armed forces of Ukraine, it's not even the real army anymore. It's more like, those peasants with their guns or partisan units pretty much, and again, to train the real serious force, it takes actually many, many months, if not years, to really make it a coherent combat formation, combat unit. So they don't have this time anymore. They grab all people from the streets now, up to 70 years old. Now they introduced even the full metal jacket for pregnant women. So there you go.
When you hear General Mike Milley says that it's going to be a long war, it's going to take many years, are they seeking some sort of military objectives in Ukraine, or they're talking just the politics, just to continue this war, just bleeding Russians? What's the objective?
Objective, so we need to understand clearly, and I'm not basically disclosing here any type of the secret. They do not do strategy in Pentagon or White House. They don't know how to do it. Their strategies always are political, as I already stated, and the politics in the United States and in the Western world always overrules the military competence. Mark Milley, he had slip of the tongue. He has those Freudian slips when he basically at some point of time was telling the truth, for a very short time. But at this stage, there's no strategy. The only strategy is to try to hurt Russia. And the more they try to do that, the worse they become off. And when you look at this, it's complete catastrophe. Everything is just disintegrated. They never had strategy. Their strategy was simple indeed, to use Ukraine as the ram against Russia, to catch Russians at the off the balance, and maybe even defeat them and return those lands, from the Donetsk and Lugansk republics, and maybe even try for Crimea. Those people have been delirious. They are incompetent. That's the shocking discovery, this litmus test, which paraded Western military political brass on top as utterly incompetent people. And they are primarily incompetent in military sense, but now we see that they don't know what to do, actually. They are panicking. And of course, they will be telling all those stories. And if you look attentively at what the so-called Institute for the Study of War wrote a couple of days ago, it's hilarious. I mean, those people are absolute idiots.
They're talking about the winter counteroffensive. They were talking about spring counteroffensive, summer counteroffensive, now about the winter counteroffensive. How the Ukrainian army is capable of carrying out a winter counteroffensive, if there would be any.
That's the problem, the real serious staff, serious level staff of the operational strategic formations, such as Corps, Army, let alone the whole armed forces or ground forces, they do what is called calculation of the required force. So and a required force, obviously, it involves, because if we talk about combined arms, or as it's very fashionable to talk today using Pentagonese language, multi-domain operations, which is more, it's air, space, all of it. They do and calculate, they calculate, see the force, they see how you can operate with this force. And of course, you have to have, for example, so many tanks, so many this and that. They don't have this in Ukraine anymore. So they can talk whatever they want to talk about, offensive, counter-offensive, whatever they call it, primarily by the morons from the American and Western media, corporate media. But the reality is the only thing they have in Ukraine now is the cannon fodder. And the quality of this cannon fodder dropped precipitously due to basically, as I already mentioned, third iteration of the armed forces of Ukraine. And you have more and more those mercenaries fighting there, although they say now the trend now that the numbers are diminishing and they are killed in industrial quantities anyway. So suddenly you have what? You have people who are what? 70 years old, you have 17-year-old kids being taken from the streets. You have women. So yeah, the hope was that Poland and Czech Republic and Germany, those countries which took those refugees, they will start returning this male contingent, which didn't want to fight to start with. So what they gonna do if they get their hands on that? Well, they're gonna pump them with the drugs. Basically, amphetamines and other types of strong stimulators are widespread use. It's well documented. So they're gonna pump them with the drugs, give them some Kalashnikov, and throw them into the meat grinder, and they too will be annihilated.
When it comes to these new weapons like Abrams, the question raises that who's going to operate these weapons? Is there any Ukrainian who was trained in the West for operating these weapons, these tanks, or mercenaries are taking care of this?
Well, we already have the first reported, pay attention, reported. It happened before. They have been caught and even POW'd cadre officers from United States and elsewhere. But we now have official confirmation that Bundeswehr cadre service people from Bundeswehr operating, for example, those Leopards. So you might expect maybe some Ukrainian crews are trained, but as I already stated, it doesn't matter. No Abrams or no tank in the world can sustain Vikhar ATGM carried by Ka-52s. Now they have another, shouldn't forget, what is called the Izdelia 305. You have, of course, Cornets. I mean, and then of course you have Russian artillery, which increasingly uses the smart munitions such as Krasnopol. So it basically the rocket propelled shell with the laser guidance. So it kills you, basically hitting you at the top of your turret. So I mean, it doesn't matter what they bring there. The result will be, the outcome will be the same. They will be annihilated.
When it comes to trainings, these trainings, we have Europeans training Ukrainian, you have Americans training Ukrainian. Does it make any difference if you go to Europe, if you go to United States? The process of training is totally different. Are they similar?
Well, there are some similarities, obviously. It's NATO, these are NATOs, I believe they have their very similar also CONOPS, concept of operations. And essentially, all those, funny armies from UK, Belgium, or Germany, the Bundeswehr, in many respects, they copy, obviously, what the American experience, quote unquote, is in the combat training. And of course, when you look attentively again at the armies of Europe, they never faced real war. I mean, like since 1945. They literally are people who have no concept, who have no experience of training anything larger than the squad or platoon on how to maneuver and how to fight modern war, especially a modern war against superpower. They have zero. In fact, I would say that zero experience is even not necessarily a bad thing. They have negative experience. That's the problem. They looked at those Gulf wars where the United States and their contingent basically beat the, bejesus out of their, third, fourth rate military without air defense, without really viable air force, without bad training. A large portion of this army have been illiterate. So, and then you go and fight Russia. I mean, really, it's not even serious. But this is what they thought. They thought that they are so great, and everybody started to copy opposite that experience. But the point is, this is what many people do not understand. And I spoke about it, and I quoted Lieutenant General Kolokotov, who have been in 92 at that time, the chief of the strategy department of the military academy of the General Staff of Russia, who stated that you cannot follow whatever the lessons you learned from the Gulf Wars, because it was anomaly. It wasn't real war. It was primarily kind of PR action, beating their, well, you know, let's face it, not only subpar, I mean, pathetic enemy. And so then suddenly you have this situation. What do you bring to the table there? Vietnam, you lost Vietnam. What else? I mean, Afghanistan never was more than just high intensity police action, counterinsurgency. That's what it is. It's high intensity police operations. And then now you suddenly have to operate and learn how to move and how operate with hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of troops which are constantly subjected to the long-range fires, to the artillery, they have their completely different state of the ISR because Russians know what they do, how they do it. So, and there you go. And they never have been ready for that. And now we see what we see. I mean, complete humiliation of the NATO military technology. So, I mean, there you go.
Shoigu yesterday said that this war gonna last until 2025. It seems that they have their strategy in their mind right now. Do we know anything about the Russian strategy? What would be the next step in the mind of Russians?
Now we do. Now we do. We didn't have it in 2022 because obviously it was very difficult to line things up because it was all predicated on the political dynamics in the West. We now know political dynamic in the West, and we know why Russians sit in the strategic defense. And as now, since the late 2022, I already started running. It's not about Ukraine. Ukraine is just one of the link into the chain. It is not just denazifying Ukraine. It is demilitarizing NATO and essentially following such, you know, building your military political strategy such a way that the final political objective is not Ukraine. I mean, Russia already won Ukraine militarily. And whatever is the NATO forces which have been attached to it. It is about denazifying NATO and essentially destroying NATO as the military political bloc. And this is what we're seeing now. And guess what? Part of this, very substantial part of it, is, of course, the political dynamics, political dimension of the war. Remember Clausewitz, you know, war is the continuation of the politics by other means. And same goes, inversely, you know, as Mr. Deng Xiaoping said once, that diplomacy is the continuation of the war by other means. And then you see now what is happening in the combined West and how United States loses precipitously its basically grasp of the modern politics and global political dynamics. And then you say, okay, here what it is. And that's the strategy. And to the 2025, Russia shouldn't be rushing. And when you look at, I will be making video today about it. When you look at Russian economy and what Russians do, they have no reason to to be in any rush.
Do you think before this war started, NATO thought that they can defeat Russia in Ukraine? Did they have any understanding of the capability of the Russian army, the level of ammunition, capability of the military-industrial complex of Russia? Did they totally understand these aspects before going to war with Russia in Ukraine?
No, Russia's study field in the combined West is a joke. When you look at the new crop, especially of the operational level of officers in the United States or in NATO, and I wrote 3 books about it. It's a joke. I mean, it's a joke. Those people do not understand the whole notion of the new paradigm in the operations in new weapon systems. They never encountered this. They don't have the experience with that. And that goes both for Pentagon, and the same goes for the political top. And I am on record, and you can quote me on that. This is primarily collection of the highly uncultured, highly unintelligent, and badly educated people, because you cannot get decent education in terms of geopolitics and in terms of the countries in the United States or in UK or in Germany. All those Ivy League humanities departments, they do not prepare them, they do not proper teach, well, most of them anyway. And as the result, you have a brainwashed people who are into the whatever woke ideology and what have you. They are ideologues, they are propagandists, but they do not have solid academic understanding of the issue. Not only how Russia operates. Enough to mention Mr. Michael McFaul, former ambassador. He is the still butt of the jokes. I mean, the guy was actually a certified idiot, and yet he still, have been. That's the level. That's when you go all those Harvards, Yales, Stanfords, these are the type of people who are being prepared there. They have no clue. And especially you cannot basically demand or ask from any American educated political scientist anything of value about Russian military history. They simply don't know. Many of them, they still believe that United States defeated Hitler and Wehrmacht. They do. I mean, that's so. What kind of lessons can you derive from that when you live in this delusion, totally virtual world of the made-up history, basically? So, and there you go. Today we have this kind of everything came to the head, so to speak, and we see the whole, demolition of this virtual reality delusions of the combined West in the last 80 years. They lied to themselves and to others for so long that essentially what we have today, you can take a look, around yourself. You see this delusion manifest itself anywhere, everywhere practically. And on the military level, we finally have the answer.
It seems that Putin's effort to come out of this Ukraine conflict through negotiations, it was perceived by the United States as weakness. Russia is so weak, and we're going to defeat it by this war in Ukraine and putting tremendous sanctions on Russian economy. Is there anybody right now in the Biden administration talking about these crucial points that could bring this war to an end?
No. Political elite of the West in the last 30 years, we observed the precipitous degeneration of them. Precipitous. We are talking about people who are literally, imbeciles, many of them are. And so, yes, being uncultured, and most of the American political elite are uncultured people. The fact that you drive some expensive car, or you can go and attend Louvre, for example, doesn't make you cultural. We're talking about cultural in a broader sense. And when you look at the scholarship, primarily, especially Anglo-Saxon, those are highly uncultured people. Hey, take a look at Boris Johnson or this imbecile Baerbock. This is the type of people. Look at Klaus Schwab. The guy has no clue about anything. And this is what is called the lack of culture. It's not just the lack of any degree. It's the lack of culture on the broader sense. When you understand and you feel the world, you can relate to it. They don't. And as the result, they still cannot grasp those things. They simply don't have a toolkit, not only intellectual toolkit. When you look at the Biden administration, show me at the person who has an IQ higher than the room temperature. It's very difficult. They are all clowns, basically, every single of them. It's unbelievable when you look at Jake Sullivan, the guy who is an attorney. He is a lawyer, and he became the national security advisor. What can he possibly advise when he doesn't know simple elementary things? Forget about being sophisticated and understanding. When you have people like George F. Kennan, for example, even James Baker, for all his Reagan connections, he knew the balance of power, sort of. These people don't. They, again, you cannot get decent education in this respect in the Western world. They don't teach it, at least in most places. You can get here and there, but Ivy League, it's just, it's also basically paraded itself as the, well, degree meal, basically. That's what it is.
You saw the latest meeting between Zelensky and Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer. And Chuck Schumer was bowing Zelensky, talking about, we are supporting you. And Mitch McConnell said, we are happy that Ukrainians are getting killed just to teach Chinese not to do the same in Taiwan. And Lindsey Graham said that this is the best investment in Ukraine that we are doing.
The moment the United States stops providing funds, because Ukraine cannot sustain itself, it doesn't exist as the functional state anymore. And you already heard that, Mr. Volodin, the Speaker of State Duma. Now you have, obviously, Mr. Patrushev and then Mr. Medvedev speaking openly. It's either going to be, they capitulate on our conditions or they cease to exist. Now, if you talk about the people like Lindsey Graham, who's a genocidal maniac, actually, he is a full-fledged war criminal, same as his late buddy, who is not with us anymore, thank God, Mr. McCain. I mean, those are genocidal maniacs. And when you look at the US Congress, they have been that short instance away from applauding other SS officers, like Canadian Parliament did. I mean, US Congress is no different. And so when you look at these people, first, again, no person in the top military political elite in the West understands what real war is. And they will not learn lessons because they have no reference point. They don't have toolkit, I mean, mental, intellectual, cultural toolkit in terms of understand that. And so when Mitch McConnell or Schumer bow and, to Zelensky, they will continue to support him as much as possible because they are, absolutely shocked that Russians told them that screw you and start fighting back. And then, of course, there are nobodies in the historical sense. The United States didn't exist when Russia already was defeating West time after time. And so when you have those clowns trying to pretend that they are actually, vaccine strategic, no, they are stupid. I mean, really are. I mean, that's the shocking discovery which people, I just came back from Russia. Many there are in shock when they look at the American military and those, generals, including those which are still serving. It's like, oh my God, this cannot be serious, but it is.
How do you see this dynamic between the Biden administration and the Congress? It seems that the Congress is not willing to send $24 billion to Ukraine. Is it beneficial to U.S. to continue this war in Ukraine, in your opinion?
No, first, the United States already lost, and the damage to the United States is catastrophic in geopolitical terms. No, they will send funds, as I already stated, mostly in the U.S. Congress. They love them to see, Russian people killed. So, and they will support it. So, no, there will be no decline in funds. They will provide them funds. Again, majority in the U.S. Congress, again, it's the same people as you saw in Canadian Parliament. So there's no difference whatsoever. They just got lucky that they haven't been caught that openly. Okay, these were Canadians who let the guard down. They got caught. And now, well, United States, the US Congress would have done pretty much the same. It's just that they got lucky not to expose themselves as dramatically as, but they will continue to talk with the Nazis and they will continue to accept them in Capitolium in US Congress. So that nothing going to change.
How did you see this latest event in Canada? They were literally cheering this neo-Nazi.
Well, again, as I already stated, most of them, and again, as I stated, it reflects the same on the U.S. Congress. And don't forget also that Trudeau's government are darlings of the Democratic National Committee and Biden administration. So as I already stated, very many of those people are not normal people. They are psychopaths and narcissists. This is the only way you can get, for example, in the US Congress or Canadian Parliament. And so they will continue. I mean, I stated, they got let their guard down for a second, and bang, we have this exposition. But tacitly, we know it was happening for decades. Okay, and so when you just, said Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, most of them are like that. Again, Lindsey Graham is psychopath. I mean, and he is covered, by the way. And so, yeah, they would love somebody to kill Russians. And it's all about basically hatred of Russia. It's visceral. And what can I say? It's not, how to put it this way. They especially are desperate now because some of them, if they do not understand, at least they sense that things are not going as they plan. And again, their plans are simple, they're primitive, like 1, 2, 3. And they're easily, those plans are easily discovered and disclosed by opposite side. And that's just the way the political elites in the West progressed, quote unquote, in the last 30 years.
In your opinion, how Russia sees all these political movement in the United States? Are they gonna wait to see who's gonna be the next president in the US just to see possibilities of negotiations, or they gonna get the job done in Ukraine and then come to negotiating table?
It's already have been stated by leading political top figures in Russia, as I just mentioned, that either Ukraine capitulates on Russian conditions or ceases to exist as a state. There will be no freezing. Russians don't care who becomes president in the United States. So they really don't. I mean, if anybody has any illusions about Mr. Trump, they should remember, if even to imagine that he gets there, that he appointed pretty much the uber neocon administration around himself, and he was the same warmonger, despite the fact that he was declaring, his intentions of living in peace. So it makes no difference whatsoever. It is the fact of the American elites basically exposing themselves and what they are, for what they are. And Russians, as I already stated, there have been many things like, is that it? In terms of, for example, US military. And what can I say? I mean, there will be no freezing. There will be no negotiations until this administration behaves itself as it behaves itself. But again, you have to understand more metaphysical issue. Russians don't trust the West at all. Everything what West says is a lie. And so hence we will see that some kind of the resolution on the conflict and forming Ukraine into something which Russia wants, or as already have been stated, you know what, it will cease to exist.
Just recently, Hillary Clinton said that Putin gonna intervene again in 2024, that Russia already intervened in 2016, that building up on that and saying that they're gonna do it again. Do you think in the mind of Putin and his administration, does it matter who's gonna be the next president of the United States, as long as these negotiations are important for the Russians?
Those negotiations are not important for Russians anymore. And Russia is now totally configured for the, if God forbids, even United States decides to commit suicide, Russia is fully committed now to the even facing whole combined force of NATO. But the point is that, it really doesn't matter. By the way, just to remind you how peaceful Trump was, he basically destroyed diplomatic relations between Russia and the United States. He basically closed every single consulate, Russian consulate in United States, starting from Seattle, San Francisco, LA, and off you go. So the only thing Russia has today is just basically the embassy in Washington, D.C. That was it. So, yeah, what's the point to sign anything with the United States or combined West when they are non-agreement capable? It has been the case, but now it's fully have been formalized in Russian politics and policies towards the combined West. So there will be no kind of document signing. What's the point signing something with people whose professional qualities are based on lying, cheating, and spinning things? So yeah, it's just pretty much Russia finally broke off with the West.
when it comes to these new allegations of Hillary Clinton in this latest interview, it comes to everybody's mind why they're hating Putin so much.
Two things. The guy stopped the looting of Russia. And inevitably, after you stop the looting of Russia by the West, it implies what happened already, Russia returning back to the state of the being superpower and basically now having the gun keeping at the temple of the United States and combined West. And secondly, if you look at the modern political elites, be them Hillary Clinton, be them Trump, or be them Biden, and these are not people of any virtue. Okay, let's put it this way. They know a lot of demagoguery about great America and all that, but they understand that as humans, as politicians, they are just basically not even in the same league with Vladimir Putin or modern Russian political elite. They are just amateurs and infants, petulant children, with their huge narcissist complexes. And of course, many of them are psychopaths. Hillary Clinton is a classic psychopath. She's genocidal maniac. So what do you expect? I mean, it's all clear who they are, okay? We're not even going to the fact that of the pedophilia being rampant in the top of the Western elites. And here you have the guy who is Christian, who is conservative in the classic, conservative sense. Of course, they hate him.
How do you see this partnership between China, Russia, Iran, Belarus, military partnership I'm talking about?
Military partnership, no alliance, because alliances, military alliances, they impose certain obligations which might actually get you into some very unpleasant developments, not in terms for yourself, but globally. We are talking about here superpowers like, pardon me, China, Russia. And when you look at this, no, it's primarily partnership. I mean, it's a close military partnership. There are many things which happen in terms of exchange between Russians and Chinese, for example. And now we have obviously Iran kind of getting on the same train set, so to speak. And there will be a lot of, still already is a lot of cooperation in this field. And so it's only natural. And yeah, that's the thing which changed already the balance of power in the world. And after the exposition of what the NATO, combined NATO hardware and operational concepts are, which are not very good, to put it mildly. So, okay, more and more countries will be detaching themselves from the America-centric world, and they will be going their own way. Not necessarily into BRICS, but they will obviously try to communicate with the people in Moscow, in Beijing, in terms of the some type of the economic and military guarantees or aid. So yeah, this is already happening. We are like literally living this moment as it happens. So
at the UN, we didn't see anybody talking about negotiations but Russians. Just Lavrov talk about negotiations. How do you see the state of diplomacy at the UN?
First, United Nations as it exists today, it's an utterly corrupt organization. Utterly. It's basically oozing corruption from all of its pores. The only thing of value from the United Nations is, of course, the fundamental UN Charter. And this is what Russians talking about. They're not saying that UN as it exists today has to be the foundation. No, they said that UN per UN Charter should be the foundation. And everybody who has any clue, they write pieces like UN as it exists today cannot exist anymore. It has to change. Nobody says that we shouldn't use UN, but it's certainly not the United Nations as it exists today. As I already stated, it's utterly corrupt. I mean, utterly. It's have been bought and bought over again and again by primarily combined West, United States, of course. So essentially, United Nations have to be reconstituted based on the primarily United Nations Charter, maybe with some as I understand. I'm not a diplomat, with some addition maybe of the Permanent Security Council members or something like that. But it certainly cannot exist as it exists today, as are most Western-run institutions. Just to give you an example, International Olympic Committee. That has to go. I mean, Olympic movement is that. It's let's stop pretending, okay? The international sport is garbage, okay? So, and that's pretty much goes across the whole spectrum. So
we know that Putin gonna participate. He accepted the invitation of Xi to participate in this Road and Belt Forum in China. Mm-hmm. How important is this, in your opinion, this forum?
Nobody cares about G20. Out of G20, you have to subtract immediately 5 countries who are absolutely, I mean, second-rate geopolitically, economically. And I'm talking about, obviously, France, the Western countries, France, UK, Germany, so, and once Italy, and Canada, I mean, their economies have been completely deindustrialized, with some exception of France. So why would you go to G20 when it should be, realistically, when you have, well, Indonesia, whatever you say, but it's growing in leaps and bounds into economically. Obviously, we're looking at this monstrosity of Chinese economy, which is colossal, simply. So, of course, it's important. Russian economy is much larger. It's not just by International Monetary Fund, which says it's much larger than German. It's larger than German economy like 2-3 times. So, and when you look at these monsters, of course, why Eurasian monster, economic and military monsters like Russia and China care about G20 with the combined West, when indeed the Belt and Road and BRICS and all those issues which have been formed right now are much more important than when you look even on the fundamental industrial indices. Again, many people do not understand. Russia produces, just to give an example, Russia produces as much steel as the United States and 2.5 times more than Germany. She produces energy 4 times more than Germany, So, and this is just electricity. So when you look at this, it's, yeah, of course, the real economic power now is concentrated in the Eurasian continent. And so is military. And we have to keep in mind the same why Putin flies to China and everything. We already see this happening, that essentially it is Russian military hardware which is already protecting to a certain degree the economic realm of this gigantic Eurasian economic market. So, and yeah, it dwarfs this G7, whatever, so it's not even funny anymore.
How did you find the Russian strategy in this war in Ukraine, just reducing drastically the level of casualties on the part of Russians?
Well, I have my friends who are people with connections, let's put it this way, okay? So I have my friends who are in the open, such like probably arguably the best military reporter in Russia today, Marat Khairulin. I have my friends, former officers, senior officers, or very senior officers. So yeah, it's clear and it's in the open now. And again, there as many people already stated this, and it's on the record, that essentially what's you have as armed forces of Ukraine, it's a broken army. It's a broken army. It cannot really fight. It can sit and take it, so they will try to do those what is called meat assaults. They call meat assaults because they pump them with their drugs. They have those what is called hedge detachments, which are primarily from Nazis. So if you don't go ahead, you killed on spot. They have the decimation procedure there now. So when you look at this, yeah, they will throw the meat again, and this is the only thing they can do. And because they never knew how to fight proper war. And again, as we already touched upon this, you don't have people in the West who understood or had any realistic assessment of what was happening. So some of them still continue to, as I already stated, the latest production of so-called Institute for the Study of War, it's laughable, it's preposterous, okay? And yet those people pretend that they know how wars are fought.